Hey guys, I'm Huub Vandermark and I'm on the road since 2 years with my puppy dog in a 1987 Russian oldtimer. The Central Asia Loop travels through Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan and Uzbekistan, referred to as the Stan countries. We start our trip in Almaty. Our first nature stop is the big Almaty Lake. We can do a walk, stay overnight or go back to the city. The first two places I visited when it was still winter. We continue to Lake Issyk, just below the town of Essek. A beautiful lake with many amenities for camping. Back on the highway we continue to Chereng Canyon, number 1 of TripAdvisor. Continuing this road a little further and taking a side road, we arrive at Lake Kindy, famous for the trees in the water. About 30 kilometers away are the Kolsai Lakes. I especially enjoyed the walk from Kolsai Lake number 1 to Kolsai Lake number 2. Is Central Asia safe to travel? Absolutely. I've met many couples doing van life, couples and solo cyclists, and solo female travelers, and all say it's at least as safe as other countries they've traveled. After the Kolsai Lakes we are going a little bit back on this road, passing Chereng Canyon, towards Chunza. Between Chunza and the Chinese border are hot springs. There's one public hot spring where you can stay as long as you want for $3. We continue to the entrance of the Altyn Emel National Park. It's still about 70 kilometers in the park to reach the Aktau Mountains. The Aktau Mountains are my favorite place in Kazakhstan. I definitely recommend camping there. On the way back you can visit the Singing Dunes in the same park. Entrance fees for the bigger sites are between $1 and $3 depending if you travel by car or not. After the Altyn Emel National Park we go back towards Almaty and make a stop at the Kepchagai Reservoir. It might not be a real ocean, but it sure looks like it. After we've arrived back in Almaty we take the night train to the new capital of Kazakhstan, Astana, which is somewhere around $12 to $30 depending on if you take the slow or the fast train. After taking the train back to Almaty we have finished our Kazakhstan tour and are continuing to Kyrgyzstan. The first city we arrive to is Bishkek. After exploring Bishkek we go to the nearby Ala-Archa National Park. Gorgeous views and nice hiking trails. We continue to Issyk-Ata. Beautiful flat walking trails and hot spring water pumped into a swimming pool. Continuing further we pass the Burana Tower in Tokmok. We'll go further on the highway to the Issyk-Kul Lake, a 200 kilometer long lake. Along the lake we stop at the Fairy Tale Mountains. There are many places along the lake suitable for camping. After the Fairy Tale Mountains we can make an optional stop 20 kilometers to the right to the Barskoon Valley to see a waterfall. At the end of the lake we arrive in Karakol, which has one of the most beautiful sceneries in Kyrgyzstan. Karakol is a nice city. You can stay for an example at a riverside guest house, where I stayed in a tent for $2.50 per person per night. Though you really come here to do the hike to Altyn Arashan. Beautiful scenery and natural hot springs. From Altan Arashan you can do a day hike to Alakul Lake. Going back along the north side of Issyk-Kul Lake, we can camp and stop at another hot spring. Then we stop in Cholponata, a beach town that from the whole of Central Asia comes closest to a vacation beach town in Europe. The water is a little cold though. We continue to Sonkul Lake, a 40-kilometer off-road drive where you can get to by Mashutka, the local taxi, by car, motorbike or bicycle. The drive is absolutely amazing. It's a pretty big climb in altitude to get there, but definitely worth it. Then we go to the Toktogul Reservoir, which has the warmest water in Kyrgyzstan. There's a little beach where you can camp. The next stop is Arslanbad, the biggest walnut forest in the world. The last city before going into Tajikistan is Osh. A little bit before the Tajikistan border we'll make a stop at Sari Mogul, where we're going to do a hike to the Lenin Peak base camp. It's time to enter Tajikistan. There are a few bumps in the road to the border, but better get used to it because Tajikistan has many more bumps in the road. The premier highway goes from Osh in Kyrgyzstan to Dushanbe in Tajikistan. It's known as the second highest altitude highway. The Karakul Lake is the first nice stop to camp. After the first town in Tajikistan, Murgab, there's an option to continue to the geyser, which was dry when I was there. And further off-road to the ruins and the stone circle. On this off-road track you have to cross a little bit of water. Back at the highway we continue to Korog, the first town after Osh that sells diesel fuel. There are also banks there. I did have issues using my MasterCard, but the Visa works well. There are banks from MasterCard in Dushanbe. I continued to Ishkashim, where was supposed to be a Saturday market on an island in between Afghanistan and Tajikistan, but I found out it was closed for months. There is a nude hot spring on the way, which is extremely hot. I don't think it's worth to add this part to the trip, but decide for yourself. We passed the big city of Kulop, where the highway starts to get really good again. Just after Kulop is the Hulber Castle, a historic point out of the Silk Route. The outside of the castle is fully rebuilt. I paid a few dollars for a tour of the castle. I really enjoyed making a stop here. Now we can go right, passing the Nurek Dam, or left, passing Sarband. My advice is to go left. Sarband is not much explored. The walking trail is where it used to be a river, so it's pretty flat and absolutely amazing. We continue further to the capital of Tajikistan, Dushanbe. Dushanbe is nothing like the rest of Tajikistan. It's all what you expect from a modern city. It's time to leave Dushanbe. Our first stop is the Guskarv waterfall. Also this one was dry when I was there, but I did really enjoy the hike. Continuing on the highway, after a little drive we turn right to Enzab. Here we find the Yagnab Valley. It's a town with a lot of history and where early inhabitants of Tajikistan survived when the Arabs invaded the country. When we're back on the highway, almost immediately we go off the highway to the left towards Lake Iskandarkul, a very pretty and big lake in Tajikistan where the president owns a summer house. A little further on the highway we turn left to the Alauddin Lakes. The Alauddin Lakes are 3 lakes about 2 kilometers away from each other. The Alauddin Lakes are one of the most beautiful lakes I've seen in Tajikistan. We continue further towards Uzbekistan. Our last stop before the border is the city of Panjakent. You can visit old ruins there, although I didn't find them that spectacular. Crossing the border into Uzbekistan, Samarkand is the first city we arrive to. Uzbekistan is all about culture. Many buildings from the Silk Route are rebuilt for tourism. Here we see the Registan Square, and this is the center marketplace. Uzbekistan has 4 major cities: Samarkand, Bukhara, Khiva and Tashkent, and there's really not much in between the cities. The cities have everything you need: nice restaurants and bazaars. But the major attractions are the ancient buildings. We continue to Bukhara. In Bukhara we can see the great minaret of the Kalon, the Boy Kalyan Mosque and the Miri Arab Madrasa, the number 1, 2 and 3 of TripAdvisor, next to each other. Also the Ark Citadel and other buildings. Then we continue to Khiva. The main thing I liked about Khiva is that all the ancient buildings are close to each other within walls. It's compact and there are many beautiful buildings. Right now the question becomes, how are you traveling? If you're traveling from Europe with your own transport, then I would skip Tashkent and continue further to the nearby border of Kazakhstan, from where you can go back into Europe. Unless you continue to Iran, of course. If you fly back from Almaty, you can make a stop in Tashkent. Tashkent is a really big city with a few nice sites. It has big shopping malls, a metro, a bazaar, an applied arts museum and everything what you expect from a big city. Tehran is the first arrival point for many. The city is quite hectic and does not have as much history as the cities we're going to talk about. The bazaars in Tehran are amongst my favorite places. Whether you arrive by plane or car, I suggest you take a snap taxi, which is similar as Uber, because driving in Iran is not easy. It is the most crowded city of the whole country. Besides the bazaars, there are several other sights to see. And also there are many traditional restaurants. If you want, you can try to smoke the local shisha. Kashan is the first city ever established in Iran and thus has the most historical buildings. It is by far my favorite city in Iran. The Maranjab Desert is about an hour drive away from the city of Kashan. You can drive there yourself or go with a tour company. In the desert you are very likely to cross camels. After about 30 kilometers off the normal road you get to a caravanserai. Isfahan is famous for their bridges, like the Kaju Bridge. As in any town you'll find beautiful mosques, bazaars, and restaurants. Between Isfahan and Yazd is the Varzaneh Desert. I stayed in an abandoned caravanserai for a night. Yazd is a city surrounded by deserts, and that's why architecture has been able to survive the longest here, as it has not suffered many attacks in the past. For an example, this mausoleum from the 11th century. On the way to Shiraz is Persepolis, an ancient city once built for a king. The ruins are pretty impressive. Shiraz really has a lot to offer. There are many buildings from kingdoms a couple hundred years ago. The Pink Mosque is one of the most famous attractions in Shiraz, especially famous at photographers around 8 in the morning because of the beautiful light that shines through the windows. The bazaar is a little different from previous seen bazaars because it's built with brick, limestone and chalk. Kish Island is the third most visited vacation destination in Southwest Asia, next to Dubai and Sharm el-Sheikh. The underground city is really beautiful to see. And also the Greek ship. Beaches to swim are separate for men and women. It's a nice island for a short visit, but I personally prefer the nearby and bigger Qeshm Island. Qeshm Island is many times bigger than Kish Island and has more to offer nature-wise. Beautiful shapes made by nature due to eruption at the Shaku Valley and at the Stars Valley. Also here you'll meet some camels. Tabriz. I personally found the Constitutional House of Tabriz an interesting place to visit, as this house, which is now a museum, tells you the story about the Iranian Revolution. There's also, like everywhere else in Iran, beautiful street art. There are a few nice spots around Tabriz. The colorful mountains are something you definitely should not miss. Possibly Lake Urmia, which is dry for the most part, and Kandovan Village, where houses are made in rocks. If you're interested to see some of the nature of Iran, I suggest you check out the Valbut waterfall. The Badab-e Surt spring, and Mount Damavand. All these places are between half an hour and a few hours away from Tehran. The Valash Lake between Tehran and the Caspian Sea, the Rudkhan Castle close to Rasht, the Saholan Cave a few hours away from Tabriz, and Lake Zarrivar close to the Iraq border. Iran is the 9th largest country of the world, so get ready for different seasons. Traveling is actually pretty easy in Iran if you can get a visa. There are comfortable buses going in the evening and several times a day from city to city for around $5. Inland flights are around $25. Traveling in Iran is pretty cheap. A plate of food costs on average between $1.50 and $2.50 in a restaurant. A hotel room between $10 and $15. But if you're a good negotiator, you get it cheaper. A snap taxi for 5 kilometers costs around 50 cents. If you drive your own car, a full tank of 10 gallon or 40 liters diesel costs around $2. Yeah, you hear that right. That's about 5 cents per liter. You do need a local to help you because you need a prepaid card to get gas and foreigners can't get one. You'll get invited many times into a local family's house and you should consider taking that invite at least once. The Iranian people are extremely friendly and I have not felt any danger anywhere in the whole country, whether I was walking in the streets of the big cities or sleeping in my van.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Welcome to city Saras.
Thank you. Iran friendly country?
Yeah. I can speak English calm.
Your English very good.
No.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We drove from Islamabad straight to the Kailash Valley, which is possible in a day if you leave early enough. Take a bit of time for the roads in North Pakistan, as to most valleys you'll drive. A big part of the roads are absolutely amazing, and for some parts you need a little bit more time. In the Kalash Valley we experienced the Kalash culture, including the beautiful dresses they wear. I think you look beautiful in it, Mary.
I'm gonna take you home with me.
Then we continued on the way to the Shandur Lake. Every time we drive to a new location, like a hiking trail or a valley, or in this case a lake. But the special thing about Pakistan for me was that it was not just the actual location that was beautiful, the road towards the location was often at least as nice. We arrived at the Shandur Lake, one of my personal favorites, as I just have a really big passion for nature, and camping at this lake and waking up at this view was just magical. We continued towards the Thunder Valley. Then camped in the forest in front of the Thunder Lake. We went further towards the Yasin Valley. You guys like the view?
Yeah, perfect. Yes, perfect.
In the Yasin Valley, we walked up a mountain to get this beautiful view. The next stop was the Ishkuman Valley. Just driving this road was absolutely amazing. Our first stop on this trip was the Kalash Valley, and close to the Kalash Valley is the city Chitral, which was the last big city with fast internet connection and which has all the supplies you expect from a city. Now, after the Ishkuman Valley, we are passing Gilgit, which is the first big city we got to after Chitral. From Gilgit, we arrive on the KKH, the Karakoram Highway. Our first stop was Minapin. We parked our car at a hotel and walked to the Rakaposhi base camp. How do you like it?
It's really good. It was tough to get here, but it was worth it at the end.
Then we drove back to the Karakoram Highway and continued to the Hobart Glacier. Now we drove to Hunza. We started exploring the town Karimabad, a cute little town that had a lot of local shops selling local products. Also, there's a viewpoint around Eagle's Nest Hotel. Continuing further, we get to Atabad Lake. Then we arrive in Gulmet, Upper Hunza, where we visited a local house. A tour that was offered by the hotel we were staying. When we left Gulmet, we made a stop at the nearby Husseini suspension bridge, famous on the tourists because of its condition. Next stop was Borat Lake. A cute little lake, and if you continue the road, you end up at the start of a hiking trail to a glacier. From here we continue towards the China border. The Pasu Cones is the first stop on the way. You can make a rest stop at the Glacier Breeze restaurant for their famous apricot pie. We continued further towards Sost. This is the last town before the China border, so if you need fuel, get it here. Then we proceed to the Kunyara Pass, the China border. The views towards it are magnificent. After visiting the China border, we're going to make a long drive back towards Gilgit. Now we're going to do a little loop. Basically, it doesn't matter if you go to Skardu first or to a store first. We decided to go to a store first and visited Rama Lake. From Rama Lake we continue to the Deosai National Park. The drive was one of the most beautiful drives we did, and we were happy we made the choice to go there. Then we arrived at the city Skardu, and from Skardu we drove to the Hasje Valley. On the way we visited the Mantoka waterfall, the Kaplu Palace, the sailing suspension bridge, and then continued the drive to the Hasje Valley. The views were absolutely amazing. Finally we arrived in Hasje, the last part of human settlement in Pakistan. Alright, let's go back! We drove back to Skardu on our way to the Yarba Zoo Lake in Shigar in the cold desert. Jeppe, kom! Then we drove to the Katpana Desert and saw Katpana Lake. Oh, hello. Now we drove back towards the Karakoram Highway. On the way we stopped at the Lower Kachura Lake and at the Upper Kachura Lake. It was time to finish this loop and drive back to the Karakoram highway. Our last stop was Ferry Meadows. At the Raikot Bridge is where the jeeps wait to bring you up to the start of the trail. I really enjoyed the jeep ride as I never sat in one of those jeeps before. The viewpoints on the hike in Ferry Meadows are amazing. Our time was running out and we drove back towards Islamabad. The road to Babusar Top, the highest point in the Babusar Valley, is absolutely stunning. We made it to Babusar Top!
Yeah!
From here on we continued along many more beautiful views back to Islamabad.
Hey, look at that!
And now we're driving from Argentina to Alaska. If you like my videos, subscribe.